So Dawada says that such an arrangement appears as a reinscription of what feminist scholars have proposed. Dawada says that, quote, Laura Mulvey argues that classical Hollywood film is made for the pleasure of the male spectator. However, as a black male spectator, I wish to argue, in addition, that the dominant cinema situates black characters primarily for the pleasure of white male and or female spectators. To illustrate this point, one may note how black male characters in contemporary Hollywood films are made less threatening to whites, either by white domestication and isolation, or by stories which blacks are depicted playing by the rules of white society and losing. Close quote. So one of the ways that in which black characters tend to be represented within kind of dominant Hollywood narrative cinema is by positioning them in kind of comedic roles, so they're not as quote unquote threatening. So and also kind of ghettoizing them at the same time. And so, for example, things like Barbershop or something like this, in which the characters are made less threatening because they're funny, and at the same time they're kind of ghettoized in a kind of confined space that is not in some way kind of threatening to the dominant culture. In other ways in which kind of black characters are represented, they're actually represented as kind of agents of dominant white culture. So one of the kind of cliches is the figure of the black police chief. You know, he is the agent of dominant white culture, and so these are ways in which black characters are negotiated within kind of a dominant the dominant white culture, and dealt with in kind of less threatening ways. So just as women have to be quote unquote domesticated in standard Hollywood films, according to Daiwada's argument, something very similar happens with regard to race. Daiwada announces right at the beginning of his essay that he interchanges the terms black spectator and resisting spectator, because these positions for Daiwada are, as he calls, heuristic devices. And heuristic simply merely refers to a form of education that is based on the premise of investigation and discovery. So Daiwada is demanding then that the spectator derive some pleasure in an active participation with the cinematic text. That pleasure can be taken from kind of the resistance to a cinematic text in the form of investigation and discovery. And so he actually concludes with a text from Frantz Fanon, who suggests that the uncritical spectator is a coward and a traitor.